Mr. Magaziner for 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Chairman. And, it was said earlier, and I agree, that we are a country of laws, we are a country of law and order, but agencies, administrations, all of us as citizens don't get to pick and choose which laws we follow. And I think it is important to note that under the law, migrants fleeing violence and persecution are entitled to claim legal asylum. That is not a law that we can just ignore. And so, Mr. Beyer, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but is it not true that under the law, migrants who are fleeing persecution, fleeing violence, are entitled to apply for, and claim if they are granted legal asylum?
Absolutely. Section 208 of the Immigration and Nationality Act makes it perfectly clear that anyone who is arriving in the United States or in the United States may apply for asylum, and that is a right protected under our laws. And further, other sections of the INA require this administration and any administration to refer them for a credible fear interview and interview that person to see if they're eligible.
So just to be clear, if an administration, this administration or any other, were to deny a migrant an interview to see if they qualify for legal asylum, that administration would be breaking the law, right?
Absolutely, and in fact, multiple courts have found that this administration and the last administration broke the law in doing that.
So let's turn the focus back onto the impact on American citizens from a failure to have a legal immigration system that is orderly and safe. Mr. Ramirez, I heard you talk, and I thank you for sharing your perspective, about the impact that migration and trafficking is having on your land and the land of your colleagues. Would it be easier for you if migrants were instead going to legal ports of entry to have their asylum claims processed than illegally going across your property or the property of your colleagues?
I would agree with that. With what we're dealing with, if it was structured, then that would eliminate the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important point that really cannot be lost here, that if we straighten out the system for people to have their applications processed at legal ports of entry, it would save everyone, particularly American citizens, a lot of violence and heartache and hassle. It was said or suggested by my friend on the other side that that's not the purview of this committee, that belongs under the jurisdiction of another committee. Well, if that was the case, my colleagues on this committee would not have passed a bill through this committee that did things like restrict the use of the CBP-1 app, which allows people, it's just an app that allows people to schedule an appointment at a legal port of entry to have their asylum claim processed. So I would just point out again, in the interest of border security, making the border safer for migrants and for American citizens, we need to have part of the conversation be how we make the system for claiming legal asylum at legal ports of entry more streamlined and safer and more accessible so that we can save everybody between the ports of entry a lot of pain and violence and heartache. I also just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of another issue. When it was H.R. 2, when that bill passed through this committee a couple months ago, one of the provisions gave the Department of Homeland Security some guidance on things that they should prioritize in their strategic plan, which is a good thing to do, and I agreed with much of it, as I know my colleagues on the Democratic side did as well. But there was a glaring omission, which was no mention whatsoever of the fact that 500,000 illegal guns a year are being trafficked from the United States to Mexico, arming the cartels. So I'll open up to any of you. Do any of you feel that it should be a priority of DHS to reduce the flow of weapons to the cartels? Or do any of you disagree with that? Let me rephrase.
Look, this is certainly a national security issue. The cartels are adversaries of the United States. There's no question about that. The fact that the United States citizens are participating in providing arms to this adversary is a legitimate function of government to intervene to prevent that from happening.
And I see my time's about to expire, so I'll just note, as a country of laws and law and order, We have to follow all the laws, and that includes cracking down on those who are illegally smuggling weapons to our adversaries on the other side of the border. Thank you for exploring these bipartisan potential solutions, and I yield back.